All right, this is very exciting. Our guest is Jon Fetherston. You probably know him. He's been in state. He's been a political guy in the media, doing everything for a couple of decades now. But most recently, he was the manager of a migrant center in Massachusetts, a hotel that was turned into a migrant center, where just absolutely horrific stories have come out of, and you've made all sorts of news. The Daily Wire grabbed this. This is I guess they're using the term whistleblower, but really you're a documentarian of an incredible and ongoing nightmare. Jon, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. So
you get the gig at the hotel as the migrant manager. What were your earliest experiences?
Well, it was chaos from the start, because there's no plan. Maura Healey has never had a plan at all. Her plan is to, no bid contracts for catering, for hotels, and for dry cleaning. We can get on all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it was crisis management day one. Here you have families that none of them speak English. I certainly don't speak Haitian Creole. Coming in, they don't know the culture in the United States. They don't know where they are. They don't know what city they're in, what town they're in. So you really just start with the basics. You get them checked into the hotel. You make sure they have food. You make sure that they've got enough clothing. Then you start signing them up for social services, Social Security, making sure that the kids are getting enrolled in school. EBT benefits, mass health. They're all entitled to mass health under the program. Because Joe Biden opened up the borders and said, come to Massachusetts, come to America. We'll give you amnesty protection. So you talk to any amnesty lawyer and they're like, none of these guys are getting amnesty. Maybe 2% of these people are going to get amnesty. What amnesty does is buys you time in country. It buys you 10 years in America. And as we're going through the process of checking people in and getting to know people and stuff, you find out, so when did you leave Haiti? When did you leave Guatemala? Oh, 10 years ago. What? What do you mean? What do you mean you left 10 years ago? Oh, yeah, we left during, the unrest in Haiti. And everybody knows there was some serious unrest in Haiti. And none of the Haitians like the Clintons, by the way. So, so they left Haiti. Most of them went to Chile. Stayed, for a while in Chile. But Chile said, hey, if you're here, you got to work. So they left and went to Brazil. And the same thing in Brazil. Most of the people that I talked to were content in Brazil until Biden sent out the message, hey, come to America. Everything's free in America.
Right. Come to America. Everything's free in America. And not only that, but there's this wonderful place called Massachusetts, which is a sanctuary state where you can live high on the hog, and come they did, Jon.
And they'll fight off the ICE people when they come to deport you. Maura Healey's gonna personally stand in the way and make sure you don't get deported. And you say there wasn't a plan, but it's almost like the plan was going to be, when they were gonna have Biden as president or Kamala Harris as president, the plan was going to be, we'll just ask for federal money and the feds will fill in the massive hole that this is gonna rip in our budget, and then we'll be fine.
100%, Alice. 100%. That was the plan.
And so now that's not going to happen. So now this is just going to cost the Massachusetts taxpayers. I know you've been involved in local government in your past, as have I, and you know how much the schools cost and these things cost in municipal budgets. I mean, what is this state going to do as more and more people are going to come into this state from across the country, since Maura Healey's advertising this?
Alice, to answer the question, it's going to be chaos. There is no good exit strategy for this, because here's a couple things. And you have to back up content, because, Maura Healey came out a week, 10 days ago and said, I'm going to limit the stays in the hotels. Okay. It sounds good, right? It's good. It's a good headline. It's BS. She said that a year ago, that she was going to limit stays in the hotel for 9 months. I can tell you that I personally know families that have been in the shelter system for 14, 16, 18 months.
Wow.
So it's a word. It's a saying. She also doesn't have the authority to do that. The legislature has to do that, because it's the right to shelter law. Governors can't change laws. So it's a lot of words, it's a lot of posturing, but here's the bottom line. Heck, because I've worked with, hand in hand, I've worked with, 500 people. At best, I was able to find minimum wage jobs for people, or maybe $17 an hour jobs. You guys know you have a family.
Mm-hmm.
Can you feed your family and house your family for $17 an hour in Massachusetts?
In Massachusetts, no way.
No. So the migrants come here expecting everything for free because they're told that everything is free. They're told that they're going to get, permanent housing for themselves, and they get subsidized by home base. And we can dive into the details of what home base is and why the landlords are all now afraid of home base. But here you are, you're bringing people to the country and you're setting them up for failure. You're failing the taxpayers, you're failing the migrants, you're failing society. Why Maura Healey has people make mistakes, people screw up. She is massively screwed up here. Admit that you've screwed up, and let's come up with a plan.
Right. And now, and you say this like we're setting people up for failure. And now I think and I think a lot of people have an idea of immigrants who come to the United States. Like most of the immigrants I know in the United States are like the hardest working people, some of the most successful people I know. Like my dad was an immigrant to the United States. He came here for grad school, married my mom, like was a physicist, was sought after by companies to work for them. Is that the type of people that are coming in these groups? Like, I think that, we have a conception that America needs immigrants. Is that like the demographic that you were seeing is like the typical perception that people have of immigrants who are super hardworking and want to come into America to get ahead?
I'll answer that question with a couple stories. The biggest problem that we had in the shelter was the divide between the hotel staff and the immigrants. Most of the hotel staff was Brazilian. Housekeeping, working in the kitchen. They see the reality in front of them, that the migrants get free housing, free dry cleaning, free legal services, EBT. They're using the ATM machine in the hotel lobby to, empty out their EBT benefits. So the hardworking hotel staff see this. And the first, the natural reaction is, well, I didn't get this when I came to this country. I worked 2, 3, 4 jobs when I came to this country. So there was animosity just because of that. And then the hotel staff would get into arguments with, some of the migrants, because Massachusetts law is that an innkeeper has to clean a room 2 days a week, minimum. So housekeeping starts work at 8:00 in the morning, knocks on the door and says, hey, listen, we're coming in to clean the rooms, which the rooms are horrific.
Right.
Because of just hoarding. I mean, you guys are family. Go on vacation with your kids. It sounds great. You're in a small hotel room with all of the belongings you have in the world. It's not a good situation.
That is
for
true.
anyone.
Mm-hmm. And
so
for
you're stuck in a
year
small
and a
room,
half, it's
and
crazy.
They don't want to get up at 8:00 in the morning when housekeeping comes. So a fight brews, and they're yelling and screaming at each other. And I'm getting calls on the radio, and you got to come and you got to, hey, explain, what the law is. And a lot of the perceptions, they don't, care what the law is. They want to go back to bed. They want to sleep. So there's a lot of animosity there. And then the other thing is that I always encourage everybody, especially in one-on-one sessions, but more importantly in like group setting, guys, you have to learn English. You have to learn English. To survive in the United States, you're going to have to learn English. And the state's going to pay for it. The state's paying for, services to come in, English is second language. Some people did attend, and I will tell you, some people actually did very, very well. But we're talking single percentages of people. A lot of them they didn't want to take English as second language classes. Some of them do speak a little bit of broken English. But more importantly, when they did find employment, they would come to me and go, what is this letter? Oh, well, that's a letter from Social Security. That's a letter from EBT, cutting your benefits because now you're making money. Oh, I made more money when I wasn't working, so I'm just going to quit. And that was a very common conversation.
John, where were they learning to have this audacity? They're new here, right? Shouldn't there be a hat in hand, modest approach?
Absolutely, there should be. But, Tom, I sat down once with a nice family that we actually did finding full-time housing for. And I sat them down and I said, hey, listen, between you having no bills and all of your benefits, your EBT, your Social Security, your WIC cards, your Obama phone program, your tax program, if you modestly spend your money and stay in shelter for a year, because that's what, the governor said you would stay, you can walk out of here with $30,000 rent subsidy from home base. Your kids will all be inoculated and have the up-to-date health care and get glasses and get their teeth worked on, be up to speed. And you will have $50,000 in cash in your bank account. Now think about that.
Wait a second. 50K.
I don't have any of them. I don't have good teeth. I don't have that bank account. I don't. So, I mean, they died and have gone to heaven, but they don't see it that way because human nature is more. I want more. I want more. So do you get your rent subsidized $1,200 a month?
No,
I don't. Do you get free healthcare? I don't. Do you get, EBT benefits? No. So, and it's real easy to say, oh, that's horrible that the migrants get it. But the three of us would sign up for that program today, right?
Well, sure. And I sure wouldn't, John, I sure wouldn't complain about the food, which they did.
Right. Oh, constantly, Tom. But can you blame the migrants? Or do you blame the enabling governor who has allowed all of this? I mean, it's crazy. And she sits there and says it's $1 billion. It's much more.
By the way, for those listening and watching out of state, Maura Healey is the person you'll hear a lot about. She is the governor of Massachusetts. She is the one who is, absolutely coughing this up. Hey, tell the story of one of the specific complaints about the cuisine, John.
Well, how much time do we have? The biggest thing is that, we would provide meals and they didn't like any of them. Working with, mostly the Haitian, I guess breakfast is the big meal of the day in Haiti. Breakfast and then dinner. Lunch is kind of, an afterthought. And so when you're originally putting out, cornflakes and yogurt and bagels, they don't like that.
Yeah.
They want their big meal at lunchtime. So, a lot of complaints about that constantly. But dinner became the bigger issue. Traditional chicken, rice, and a vegetable. It was typical hotel catering meal. Totally good quality meals. They hated them. And, they throw food at me. They spit up, constantly complain. So, we would, because I think I'm a pretty sensible, reasonable guy, sit down and you look at people and say, hey, we're here to help people. Let's sit down and have a meeting about, like what could I get the hotel staff to create for you? Cat stew. Excuse me? Well, we like cat stew. No, you can't eat your cats in America. Well, you're racist. Well, no, I'm not racist. It's just not culturally acceptable that you have cat stew. Well, okay, if you can't have cat, well, can we have goat? Oh, okay, well, we can look at that. We can look into that. But providing them free meals made me a racist because they didn't like it. We had a caterer at first that would bring in meals, and they weren't good. By the time they got there, they were cold. They weren't fresh. They weren't big enough. They weren't the right type of seasoning in the rice or the chicken. So that turned into a disaster. So then we got the hotel to make dinner because the hotel was doing breakfast and lunch. So then we finally got them to do, 3 meals a day, and they didn't like those. So every day was every day. So, and then on top of it, they wouldn't like the food, so they wouldn't eat the food. But keep in mind, they have more cash flow than the three of us have.
Sure.
They would take the food, bring it back to the room, leave it in the room, because keep in mind, housekeeping only cleans the rooms 2 days a week. There's 7 days in a week. So sometimes housekeeping would walk in, there's 5-day-old food sitting on the counter. So you can imagine what that causes. And they would just do, because they have more cash than you and I do, they would just call, Uber Eats, and Uber would bring Taco Bell and McDonald's to them because they could afford it.
Amazing. But not one cat was hurt during your tenure there, John, thankfully.
Well, that's not true.
Oh, no.
an adorable young girl found a cat out by the dumpster area once and brought it into the lobby, and was stopped by the security. And security said, "No, you can't have pets here." And I wasn't part of that conversation. I guess evidently, told the girl to go back outside and let the cat come back. Well, a parent came down looking for me, all hot and bothered, saying that I wasn't respecting his religious rights. And I'm like, what are we talking about? And he's like, we weren't going to eat the cat. We were going to do a voodoo ceremony on the cat out because there's a gazebo out in the area. And I'm like, you cannot do that. Well, you're not respecting my religious rights. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to say, but you still can't do it. And it turned into a big brouhaha, shouting match, and how dare I do that? And it's just like, guys, once again, you're not in your country, and in America, we don't, do voodoo sacrifices of cats out of the gazebo.
Amazing. So we've kind of buried the lead just on purpose because I wanted to get the day to day, but things got really dark with some crime inside the hotel, including an unspeakable crime. Take us through that, John.
Well, I think the one that you're referencing, because there were multiple, unfortunately. But, very disturbing conversation. I was sitting with a DCF agent, and the DCF agent asked, there's a Haitian Creole interpreter on the phone. And she says, do you have sex with your daughter? And wide-eyed smile, yes. Well, when did you start having sex with your daughter? And this next part might be difficult for people watching, but I think it shows you what we're dealing with here is, well, when women bleed in Haiti, you can have sex with them.
Wow.
And
wow.
I was like, what? So he's then asked, well, when did you have sex with them? Did you have sex with them and, when you were coming to the country? Yes. When was the last time you had sex with your daughter? Today.
Oh.
Today. Turns out the girl was pregnant.
Oh.
And there's good chance that the father is the father.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So DCF removed her immediately from custody.
Okay.
And there's a knock on the door, and it's the Marlboro police. Conversations transpire through DCF. DCF agent, who was wonderful, ends up taking the girl to out of the shelter and putting her into a DCF protected shelter somewhere in the area.
Mm-hmm.
The police come to me and say, hey, probably a good idea to get him out of here, transfer him to Worcester. And as you guys know, I'm a former selectman, and
sure.
I kind of know the laws. I'm not saying that I'm an expert, but I kind of know. And I go, what? No, what? And they're like, what? No. And I'm like, if we take him from Middlesex County and transfer him to Worcester County, there's no way a DA is ever going to touch this, because the crime didn't happen in their district.
Right.
Well, the best thing to do is just get him out of here for tonight and transfer him to a shelter in Worcester. So I called an Uber. You guys, you use the taxpayers paid for him to go to another shelter. And I'm literally said to the police, the guy just admitted that he rapes his own daughter. Do you think he's not going to commit a rape again in another shelter?
Does he have diplomatic immunity? How come this guy was not placed in the back of the squad car?
Because they want this thing to go away, Tom. All of them want it to go away.
That's freaking believable.
Tom, I've had multiple conversations with state troopers about, hey, I know this guy doesn't have a license. I know you pulled him over. What did you take? Well, we gave him a stern warning. Well, what would you have done if it was me? He's like, I would have arrested you. And I'm like, so then what's the double standard? And he's like, the double standard is the governor wants this. We just try to kind of make it work. We don't agree with it, but, what are we supposed to do? The guy who ran his car into my office,
Wait a second. He did what?
Yes.
He ran his car. I was sitting at my desk in my office, and he ran his car through the wall into my office. And we just thought it was because he was a knucklehead and didn't know how to drive, because he didn't have an American driver's license. He had an expired Haitian driver's license. Turns out, and it's hearsay, but I I think it's pretty credible hearsay, is that it was in retaliation because we started cutting back on giving out diapers and wipes to individuals who had that were on government benefits, EBT cards and Social Security and stuff. So we said, you can't. We gave it to you because you didn't have benefits, because it was the right, you just had a baby and you need diapers, you need wipes, you just came to this country, you need to take care of the baby. But now that you're signed up for, benefits, we can't continue to do it. You'd be like double dipping. So I am told that it was in retaliation for that. I can't speak, 100%, but because, I went ass over my feet, over my head, the only reason I wasn't killed is because the air conditioning heating unit stopped the car. But I was told later that he didn't just hit the building once. He backed up and tried to come through the building again.
So the price for asking somebody to dip into their own taxpayer-funded benefits is Jon Fetherston must die.
I'd love to tell you that it didn't happen, but it did. So it's all documented.
And so what happened to this person? Were there any consequences for this kind of the destruction of property, the reckless driving? I mean, will he be able to go out and get an American license, next month?
Well, because you can't make it up. He did get actually cited, which is
okay.
Oh, wow.
It's like progress.
Too bad it didn't cite the rapist.
So he comes to me a couple months later with a letter from the RMV saying that, he's got a hearing and he's got all this other stuff and he's got to pay a $500 fine. Once again, keep in mind, I don't speak Haitian Creole, so I have to go get a case manager who can interpret for me and stuff. And they're like saying that he has to pay the fine, and before he can even, reapply for a temporary driver's license or a permit or anything like that. Well, he starts getting mad at me and blaming me that it's all my fault because I did this. And I'm like, no, but this is not how it works in America. I am the manager of the shelter. I don't manage the RMV, because if I did, I would do things a lot different.
Yeah.
You've got to work it out with the RMV. No, this is your fault. You did this. You make, and I'm like, no, that's not. Once again, culturally, they just don't understand how America works. Coming from a lawless country.
Isn't there an orientation program along the way, John?
Well, Tom, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know how government works, right? Mm-hmm. So many times I called the governor's office, and if the phone don't ring, it's her calling you back. I reach out to local government. I reach out to local senators. I tried to get a task force because I realized that I was in a horrible situation, but tried to make a good situation. I had 5 or 6 case managers who were only hired because they spoke Haitian Creole, not because they were qualified case managers. A case manager typically is a psychologist or somebody that's worked in the mental health field. They were hired because they knew how to, communicate with staff. So not overly qualified staff, and myself. So I reached out and said, hey, let's form a task force. Let's come up with solutions. And let's work with government agencies to come out and do that. Well, nobody wanted to put their fingerprints on this because they all knew it was a disastrous situation. I probably called the governor's office a half a dozen times and I just gave up. I actually saw her on the field at Gillette Stadium during the Army-Navy game a year ago. And I literally went up to her and told her, like, hey, I really need to talk to you. I really need, we're really struggling here. I need some help. She literally told me, call my office. Well, I called her office a dozen times.
That's where complaints go to die. Call my office.
Yeah. I mean, is that the fancy way of saying F you?
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. Absolutely. No, I deal with it all the time. People who are trying to petition their town boards of education, and they say, just give me a call privately, and we'll do. What a total and utter disaster. What a disaster. So, first of all, when did you quit or get fired or transferred? How did this end?
I ended up severing the relationship in July.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, I'm an old man. I'm a grown old man who's been a public servant for all my life. I didn't realize how emotionally and mentally I've been affected by this situation. Like I've been a mess for a couple months. So once again, go back to the migrants. If I'm mentally messed up from this, are they? Not only did, some of them did escape, political pressure and stuff. So there's a tremendous amount of mental health problems inside the shelter, especially the kids, the kids. So I'm messed up. They're messed up. Alice asked, what's the end game here? The end game is you're going to eventually house minimum wage people who have a lot of anger and mental health issues and have never adapted to the culture or the language. Anybody with common sense says this thing is just never going to work. It's just never going to work.
Right. And it sounds like the level of criminality, including sometimes by the parents towards their own children, and or by others in these shelters, is completely shocking. That's, I think, what's so scandalous to me, too, is this is purporting to help these migrants, but anyone who is a well-meaning migrant who's escaping to this country and seeking asylum and seeking help is not being helped by being thrown into a situation with, like, apparently the worst criminal elements out there.
Criminal, sanitation, hoarding issues. But, getting back to the father and his daughter's story, I'd have people stop me. Hey, in our country, this is acceptable behavior. Okay, well, okay, that might be the case. But you're in America now. That's not acceptable behavior. No, John, you need to understand that this happens in Haiti. No, you need to understand more. So I'm not saying that I was a hero for standing up or, calling it out or anything, because I'm not. I'm a parent. I looked at this like, oh my God, can you imagine if this was my daughter or our friend's daughter, or God forbid one of your guys' kids? You just do the right thing because that's what you're supposed to do all the time. You do the right thing. So there was the other case where this two teenage girls were getting raped by another guy in the shelter.
Oh.
And so that was kind of the apex. People got mad at me, like, who are you to choose, to call these people out. You move this family out of the shelter now just because the husband committed the rape. Well, yeah, I moved his family out of the shelter because he kept on coming back to the shelter after we knew he was a rapist. We don't want that element inside the shelter. But most of the residents got mad at me, but like, you're breaking up a family, and this is what Trump's going to run into. So, like, Tom Holman should call me and we can talk about it. But the bottom line is like, I don't want your raping husband back on the property here. And then I get a call from the school going, well, he's here to pick up his kids. Should we be worried? I'm like, yeah, you should be worried. You have a rapist on your property.
What a mess.
You should be worried. Well, what should we do? And I'm like, guys, I'm a shelter director. Call the police. Call the FBI. Call the state police. Like everything just kind of like came back to me. Well, like, what should we do? And it's like, do I really need to tell a professional, principal?
We call the police. We call immigration services. We call whoever it is that we need to call to get these people who shouldn't even be here out, because they're not only, adding this criminal element to our society, but they're victimizing their own children and other people who escaped from who knows what horrors too. It's really shocking. I'm so glad you joined us today, John, and exposed this behavior. I mean, we're going to keep talking about this. I know you're going to keep speaking out about it and spreading the word, because I don't think people realize when Maura Healey goes out here and talks about these shelters that, it's not just a question of expense. It's not just a question of, people missing some paperwork and we're going to help them get on their feet. This is, I don't think people have any idea the level of depravity that we're talking about. So I'm so glad you're here and speaking out about this and sharing this with our listeners.
Well, Alice, when Maura Healey doubled down on MSNBC and said that she was not going to cooperate. Now, listen, I want to be perfectly clear about this, and I took a little, online criticism for saying this, but I still stand by this statement, and that's why I'm going to say it again. 99% of the migrants that I worked with, good, nice people, just here trying to make a better life for their family, right? Nice people, good people, follow the rules.
Sure.
The 1% that weren't are the most horrible people I've ever met in my life. So, and I've met a lot of, I've been in public service for a long time. I've met a lot of great people and I've met a lot of bad people over the years. But, bad people have rights too, right? They do,
Yeah.
Bad people have rights. But the rights of a bad person in the Healy Hotel Corporation do not have more rights than your kids do. Maura Healey has put your children in danger because you have rapists walking around the street right now. One, you don't know where they are.
Right.
Two, you really don't know what their names is. And I'll go into a little bit of that as well. You don't know where they are, who they are, picking up kids because this gentleman who was living in the shelter with his daughter and having those inappropriate relationships had a wife living up in Lawrence area in another shelter with another baby. So going back, so you don't know where anybody is. And if you're going to rape your own daughter, there's chances are you don't have very high standards. You're going to rape anybody or anything, right?
Absolutely.
So you shouldn't deport 99% of these people because, like I said, they were invited here, told that this is the way it goes. And if they don't break the law, you shouldn't. But Maura Healey's going to protect the guy who rapes his own daughter, and he's not going to protect she's not going to protect your kids. There's a systematic problem here.
There was this guy up here who wasn't.
I don't know how
even
Maura
in a
Healey
shelter.
sleeps at night.
That he was let out after raping a 10-year-old.
Yes.
And the Massachusetts courts just gave him $1,000 bail, and we're like, see you later. And ICE had to go grab him somewhere else because the Massachusetts courts haven't been complying. It's incredible, and I really think we need to continue shining a light on this. Keep pointing it out. Because the Trump administration coming in hopefully will really change things here and make sure that this is not allowed to continue.
Yeah, John, you need to be talking to Tom Homan. His name is Jon Fetherston. You can find him on Twitter. He's a great Twitter follow at Local Politics IS. Politics, is that Politics Is, or what does IS stand for?
Yeah,
That's the Twitter algorithm. Local Politics Is. Yeah.
Ooh, very nicely done. John, great work. Congratulations. And let's reconnect on the road a little bit, okay?
Hey, good to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
What absolute nightmare. Can you imagine just moving these people along? Moving them around? We're moving them to Worcester County. Yeah, well, whatever. This is what happens because there's no, like John was saying, there's no plan. There is no plan. Right. There's just we're a sanctuary
place. The plan
place.
was we'll ask for federal money when Kamala's president, and she'll give us other taxpayer dollars to make sure that that this can continue to happen. Julian Phillips said they're not going to bail out Massachusetts. Exactly. They're not going to bail out Massachusetts. They're going to come, hopefully send ICE in here and arrest Maura Healey. I don't know what they can do, but I'll take it. I mean, Tom Homan has threatened to arrest public officials.
I hope he comes right up here.
If Maura Healey's letting rapists walk the street, I'm fine with that.
Well, and also, so it reminds me of the Daniel Penny thing. Mm-hmm. This is what they did with their progressive ideals out of compassion and out of a rubric of intersectionality is that we need to have equity, and so we need to give special allowances and allotments to some people and not to others, etc. And so what they've done is crush law enforcement. They've crushed the immigration system, and so it's total carnage. And that's why you have Daniel Penny on the train having to subdue some psychotic. This is the outcome. And you know what? With Maura Healey, she hasn't pulled a 180 and said, you know what, as it turns out, I have to do some soul searching. No, they still think it's working.
Yeah, they think it's great. This program's awesome.
Yes. The Best Western, which is now, a collection of Where Ape Rooms, etc. That's fine. Yeah, they're here. Yeah, we're sanctuary citying, which should be all good. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's amazing. It is horrific to hear that stuff.
But like you say, these are policy choices. And so the Daniel Penny verdict came out today, which thank God he was not guilty on the second lesser charge. More on that in a second. But he was put into that situation by the repeated failures to get this guy the help he obviously needed. Arrested 42 times, homeless, probably schizophrenic, on drugs. And his dad has the gall to come out here and say that he deserves financial compensation after abandoning his son for decades after his mother was murdered and throwing him into the foster system because he couldn't be bothered.
Right.
He has a gall to come out here and demand cash.
And the BLM thugs and punks are out there saying we got to burn it down because this happens. This is no white man would ever be convicted of. Shut up.
So this is especially interesting too because the case we talked about a little on whatever that was, Thursday or Sunday, I forget when we talked about the verdict, or the sort of initial deliberations when they had said they came out and the jury was hung on the bigger charge, and the judge sent them back in and said, think about it more. They came out and we said we just can't agree either way on the bigger charge.
Right.
And the judge said, fine. And the prosecutor said, okay, fine. Well, we'll dismiss the bigger charge and we'll just go for the lesser charge, which is kind of shenanigans a little bit.
Well, totally.
Because, it's weird to dismiss a charge in the middle of the case. So the judge dismissed it with prejudice, which means they can't retry that bigger charge, and send the jury back in to consider the lesser charge, which they were only really supposed to have to consider if they had acquitted on the greater charge, which they didn't. But okay. Anyway, so they went back in and they came out today after a couple hours and acquitted on the lesser charge.
Which is, if they hadn't done that, then I don't even know what.
I don't even know what either, but I do think it's interesting that they were hung on the bigger charge, but acquitted on the lesser charge. Mm-hmm. And now some people are saying it's because the bigger charge was like that he did it with knowledge, meaning to, and the lesser charge was that he didn't mean to because it was sort of negligent. It was criminally negligent homicide. So that they were sort of stuck after arguing that he knew it could kill him, and they couldn't agree that he did it without meaning to.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting. I tend to think that's not what happened. I tend to think either somebody just got tired of disagreeing and gave up.
Yeah. Yes.
And wanted to go home.
Yeah.
Or I think that possibly the fact that this was kind of low for them to say we're hung, we can't agree, and then they sent them back in to deliberate more, that they felt it was shenanigans a little bit. That they felt it was a little bit sneaky and a little bit trying to go after this guy after they had already said hung jury, and that it wasn't really fair, and so decided to acquit. I think that's a possibility. I think they maybe went out of their way a little too much to try and get this guy, and the jury sensed it and didn't feel good about it.
Gotcha.
I think that's a possibility. I don't think we know what went on in the jury deliberations, but that's where we are right now.
Also, the final thing is obviously the most Italian-sounding name in the history of the world.
Luigi Mangione.
Mangione is allegedly the killer of Brian Thompson.
Seemingly pretty much seems to be.
We kind of called it, a pseudo-intellectual sociopath.
He thinks he's really, really smart.
Yeah, I think he's really smart. He's a rich kid, which we definitely
he was the
he
valedictorian of his prep school. He went to Penn. He has a master's in computer science engineering. He's... So apparently what's sort of starting to develop based on a bunch of things. For one thing, on his social media, there has been a bunch of people mentioning him on social media asking where he's been for the last 6 months or so. Seemingly he had some kind of back injury like last year.
Yes.
And it seems like maybe what happened, there's a lot in one of his biggest accounts that people are looking at is his Goodreads account. Are you familiar with Goodreads?
No, but
it's where you go and you post about like books that you've read and you review them. Big Ted Kaczynski fan.
Yeah.
He loved the Unabomber's work. He was very into that. Big Ted Kaczynski fan. He rated it a 4 out of 5. He seems to have been like kind of a fitness bro.
Yeah.
He was into Huberman.
Huberman? I don't know who that is.
He's been on Rogan. He's sort of like a health podcaster.
Oh, okay.
really into Huberman. That was like his last tweet. Was one of his podcast episodes. Like he'll like do a podcast episode about like having good posture or something.
Okay.
Like, so anyway, so he had read a lot of books about like back pain and dealing with chronic back pain. The other thing he had read a lot of stuff about and had a lot of like lists made of stuff on his Twitter and everything and posted about a lot was psychedelics.
Gotcha.
So seemingly what maybe happened is that he had some kind of back problem and tried like ayahuasca or mushrooms.
Yeah.
And sent himself into some kind of like schizo path.
Is ayahuasca mushrooms or is that psilocybin?
Ayahuasca is a different one. Psilocybin is mushrooms.
Okay.
Ayahuasca is a different, like a native
Gotcha.
thing. It's like it's another psychedelic, really. Both of which, like I've talked about, like people experience demonic presences with these things. Like you can totally just break your brain on some of these drugs, especially like depending on dosages and whatever. And so something happened. He injures his back, gets very into psychedelics, and vanishes off the grid. His family was looking for him. There was like posts on Twitter, people being like, "Bro, where are you? Your family's all wondering. Nobody's heard from you." So apparently he like fell off the grid and like reemerged as this. Now he thinks he's a genius. Like
with the monopoly money and all the bits.
Oh, yeah, bits. There's now a new thing that popped up on his YouTube that is like, if you're seeing this, I've been arrested, and has like a countdown timer. So, yeah. He thinks he's like really smart, but clearly like he got caught in like 10 seconds, which is what we said would happen yesterday since they had pictures of his face like everywhere. He got recognized in a McDonald's. But yeah, like I mean, I guess we'll find out more. He had his whole manifesto
like, I understand
with him.
If you're going to be a psycho and to whack somebody out and a pseudo intellectual, pretend genius, sociopath, loser, etc., it's fine. I get it. But maybe you wouldn't like dine in at the McDonald's.
Maybe, call Uber Eats or something.
Right, or maybe just grab it on the go. Considering your face is everywhere, maybe it's time to be, be one of those guys who walks down the highway in the median and with your head down.
As far as ideology, he doesn't seem like he was very far left wing or right wing. If anything, he's sort of in this like Rogan-y centrist, like science bro. Like somebody called him a LinkedIn bro. And so like a lot of like I was saying, like dealing with chronic back pain, like health and kind of self-improvement type stuff.
Remember
he obviously was a very normal, like into normal stuff, like into his career, being good at school.
Right.
He obviously had an Ivy League master's degree, so he's
he's
like
just
pretty...
a psycho, which reminds me of the
No, but I think
the drugs did it?
I think the drugs snapped him in a weird direction.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a pattern of when he was injured to that, but he sounds to me like the Craigslist killer. It's like, okay, you're in medical school. Things are about to be awesome for you. Just make sure you don't kill a hooker, okay? Because then things are going to go badly, and then you're going to hang yourself in your cell, and look, he did it. There you go.
I don't know, though. It doesn't seem like, from what people are saying, like, it doesn't seem like he was necessarily a psycho before. So I don't know, but apparently he had like a big character snap when that happened. Not that I'm saying, I don't think he was like a Jared Loughner crazy, like out of his mind. Like I think he obviously knew what he was doing, killing this guy and everything. Just, I think he had a personality redesign when he tried those drugs. Like I do. I think he was like a aggressively normal guy, and like something, just a switch went off or something. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out more. They have his manifesto. I'm sure he's got more little scheduled YouTube videos ready to pop up that are ready to go. But
imagine getting in an argument, Alice, and I've worked in hotels for a long time, but imagine getting in an argument over cat soup. Okay, Alice, I think it's time for by the way, one of the biggest backhanded compliments in the history of my life came today from Mike Montante, who called me listening to last night's show and said, Tom, I'm just listening to your show right now from last night. This has been the best 5 minutes of any show I've ever heard. And it was the Chat Chat. It was the only part of the show that wasn't us. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I guess all you guys can take a bow. We ready, Alice?
I'm ready.
Holy Moses, did you guys crucify Lindsay Lohan the other day? I mean, I heard it's so bad that she's outside of a West Hollywood liquor store contemplating on drinking again.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, you guys crucified that poor woman.
Did we?
I mean, what's wrong with
We
you
said
both?
she was a good
When
actress.
did you guys...
Hold on. He's standing up. This is called chivalry. We did say she's a good actor, but, you know.
I also said she looks 60 instead of 80 now, so that's an improvement.
She does. Maybe she wants to look aged.
I mean, when did you guys become Siskel and Ebert? It's a throwaway Hollywood movie. You don't have to really overthink it. I mean, trust me, I went to go see Moana 2 the other day with my daughter because I knew that was a great way to kill an afternoon.
Yes.
I mean, if there's a way for you guys to, watch a movie with the family and have it kill a couple hours, that's a win. I mean, but for you guys to tear apart poor Lindsay Lohan, who, by the way, Tom,
Yes.
in the height of her beauty, was definitely up there. I mean, she was a A-lister in terms of hot.
I'm familiar.
Wow. I didn't see
familiar.
that coming. Poor girl. I really hope she doesn't go back to drinking after that episode.
Well, here's the thing, Steve, is that these rom-coms, Hallmark Channel rom-coms, can be done well.
They're great. We watched one the other night about a hotel.
Yes.
It was fantastic.
We don't ask for much.
A+.
This one wasn't.
Hallmarky Christmas rom-com.
When
Perfect.
I was in charge of the WRKO website, Alice, I was trying to get clicks, impressions, page views, so to compete with the other stations in the cluster. So I would go out and try to find stories that had Lindsay Lohan in them, or back then it was Britney Spears too. And this is an insider thing. I would try to make the pictures as risque as possible so that you'd click and go right through. And so, remember, Lindsay had been nude at the time for like a Playboy shoot or whatever. So I, at one point, would Photoshop clothes onto her. Like barely, but onto her, which is anything I could do. It never took. The only thing that ever took. I mean, they got page views, but it wasn't a draw that I would have clicked on it. But apparently, some other people had
different ideas.
Had different ideas, yeah. But so there you go, Alice. Reverse engineering Lindsay Lohan. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Hey guys, Paul in the car.
Hey, Paul.
I have to do it, so just give me 20 seconds.
Uh-oh.
Steve from Gloucester. Nobody cares, man. I certainly don't. I don't think any of the listeners care. Nobody cares that I'm calling in and saying to you that nobody cares. So just do us all a favor and sheesh, God, who cares? Nobody cares about your podcast history, and Kirk still sucks despite all of that.
Ooh.
So it's just my opinion. Deal with it. It's fine.
Now, Paul, you say that. Now he's going to come back in White Knight for Kirk. I don't even know. I haven't listened to the show today, so I don't know what Cullinan's finding and not finding. I'm sure Steve's working on him, too, to tell him where to go. Is a big operation happening?
Everybody else is fine. And I'm sorry to the listeners, but I just can't not respond. Kind of like Steve from Gloucester, who, thank you, by the way, for the defense. I appreciate it. Much obliged.
There we
Thank
go.
you. The reason, really, truly, for my call, and sorry that was longer than 20 seconds, so I'll be quick.
Sure.
This potential pardon of Fauci has me losing sleep because I want nothing more than this man to go to jail.
Yep.
I want to watch the congressional hearings when Trump's admin is up there nailing him repeatedly to
Yes.
the wall. He lied to us incessantly. People died because of it.
Mm-hmm.
People died otherwise. It was tragic, but he lied to us. Nothing worked. The 6 feet was made up. It didn't work. The masks never worked and never will. It was all just a complete farce, and I want to see him pay for it. And to think that Biden will come to his rescue and pardon him just drives me crazy. Makes me want the whole idea of pardons to go away. And I don't mean that seriously, but this man needs to face the music, and I can't wait to watch it. Sorry for the first part of the call. I promise I'll do better in the future.
It's
Thanks,
fine.
guys.
The Chat is an entity of its own. It's a show of its own, really, as it turns out. You ready, Alice?
Yes, I'm ready.
Hey, Tom, Dr. Cheswick on Stolen Land.
Hey.
Listen, how about that Georgia Maloney, huh?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying,
We are a
kid?
fan. We are a fan.
Yeah. Probably cooks up a mean plate
Oh.
of pasta, my friend.
Yes.
A mean plate of pasta.
Yes.
You know what I'm getting at? She's single.
Yeah.
Leader of a country. What more do you need, my friend? What
Steve
more
from
do you
Gloucester
need?
travels to Italy.
He's got a place over there, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he could invite over Georgia anytime.
But he's dating, what's her name? Casey Smith. I think. That's what my mole say.
Hey, guys, help me to understand this.
Yeah,
so,
Steve.
the comment Paul in the car made last week, I just find to be hypocritical, and I want you guys to tell me if I'm wrong here. So, he had mentioned how he disliked Kirk in his show,
Yes.
and he's just an example because there are people out there, for example, that don't like Kirk
Mhm.
or find what Elon posts on X to be rude, find Tucker Carlson, to be ignorant and say that he's wrong in interviewing certain people.
Mhm.
Yet those same people also defend, promote, and vote for President Trump, who has said a lot of nasty and vile things over the years.
Sure.
So isn't it kind of hypocritical in a way to be anti-Elon, anti-Tucker, anti-Kirk, but then be pro-Trump? I mean, shouldn't we all be kind of on the same page with guys like Kirk and Elon and Tucker and President Trump? Because they're fighting against the machine. They're going against the hypocrites. They want to drain the swamp. And, from what we know of Kirk, he's no different than Tucker. He's no different than Elon or President Trump in that, he calls people out and
Sure.
he exposes people for just being fraudulent. So I find it very fascinating that somebody like Paul, for example, could dislike Kirk, but like President Trump. It just seems hypocritical at the root of it all. So help me to understand that.
I'm not sure. I think Paul would probably be able to answer this better than us. But
I think Paul in the car would probably vote for Kirk if he were running for president against Kamala Harris.
There's people who Kirk got huge on WEI. There are people who listen to WEI for the sports, and then there's people who are like me who listen to WEI despite the sports, or I should say the morning show despite the sports.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just wanted sports with like Toucher and Rich were doing and X's and O's and stuff. And really, Kirk and Jerry weren't very interested in doing that, and that's why it was so good. So maybe that's what it is. That's what I can't. I can't get into Paul's head for sure.
Hey guys, Paul in the car, real quick.
Hey, Paul.
I realized now, and I think you haven't gone live yet, so I think the smell still may make it for this evening, that my prior call, I incorrectly referred to the good Steve as Steve from Gloucester. So, Steve Merrimack, I apologize sincerely. That was an oversight, and just a complete brain fart. So I apologize. I think everybody knew what I meant, but had to call in and clarify that. Thanks, guys.
Wow, man, the solidarity on this particular show is laudable, Als.
Thank you so much for the calls. The chat almost should be its own show.
I think it
at
is.
this point.
I think you got two kind of listeners up to this Burn Barrel podcast. For the people who forward all the way to the chat, and the people who bail out.
And who complain to us that too much of the show is now the chat.
Right.
So we have both types of listeners. You're all welcome here. And we support all of you, whichever half of the show you choose to listen to. Thank you so much to Jon Fetherston for joining us today. Really great interview. Spread the word on this. If you want to join us for the live chats, we have people in the live chats talking about it, then patreon.com/burnbarrel.
C'est la vie.